Hello there. My name is Zach Fierce, lead developer of Bombfest, and today we have a special guest with us. Please welcome Brian Wilson. He's the developer of Where the Bees Make Honey, an indie puzzle adventure game that will be coming out next year. Is that correct?
Yeah, March 2019.
Holy crap, I didn't know there was a date. That's fantastic.
There is a date, and I think that's more terrifying. But hey, Zach, thanks for having me. Yeah, I'm Brian Wilson. I'm the solo developer on Where the Bees Make Honey. It's kind of been my first game, and I'm just happy to be here.
Well, we're happy to have you. And hey, guys, this is an open Q&A, so if you've got any questions for Brian, whether it comes to game development, art design and direction, being an independent, working with publishers, whatever you think of, feel free to type in the chat now, and we will go ahead with those questions. If you've been to one of these Q&As before, you know the first question is always the same. So, Brian, how did you get started in game development?
Wow, what a question. How did I get started? I think the first thing, going probably as far back as I can, is just to be as I've just been a fan,
Mm-hmm.
a fan first, by just playing and being a fan of the entire industry. And I think to I think the next step was just wanting to be on like the writing side of things, just
Hmm.
like because I found out like I was like I want to make games, and then I found out really quickly, and this was at the end of high school, that was just entirely too hard.
Hmm.
So, but I could write it, I could talk about them, and that's when I kind of discovered podcasts and other websites, and that was something people did. Um, and then that kind of evolved into like still not being satisfying enough, but kind of I feel like the first major leap was the fact that I have an associate's degree in game development and programming from the Community College of Allegheny County in Pittsburgh, and that was just kind of my introduction to everything. So I think that was probably the biggest um, first step, if
Shoot.
that is your question. It's a big question, right? There's so many different factors, right? That like it's not just one thing. I think there are some definitive moments, but um, it's all kind of iterative and in a really big process.
Yeah, I would probably say the same. Fantastic. Well, you mentioned you went to you went to education.
I did
you
I did education.
what is your degree in?
Yeah, so I have an associate's, and the program was specifically called Multimedia Programming, Simulation, and Gaming.
Hmm.
And then I'm getting my bachelor's degree now at a branch of Penn State, and that's called Digital Media Arts and Technology.
Oh, sick. I
Yeah,
think our artist Marissa has the same degree.
yeah,
So,
something like that.
anyways, an aside. Well, we are happy to have you, and we've got some questions here
Great.
that we would love to throw at you from the community. And if you are in the chat and you've got some more questions for Brian, please feel free to type them, and I promise I will get to them. So, this first question here comes from Buddy, the same one in chat, but asked a little earlier. Oh, shoot, he's asking the same one right now.
There he is.
What are the things that inspired Where the Bees Make Honey? Not just the concept, but the mechanics.
Yeah. So in terms of the mechanics, when I was just learning 3D, it was incredibly intimidating, but so like fascinating that I wanted to make. It's actually the spring level of my game, which I'll point out on the slide, where like I almost like in a Rubik's cube, but like in an isometric perspective, and the fact that if that were turned or you saw the other side, there was something else that you couldn't see just from that initial view. And I was first just using Blender, so nothing interactive, but like I just really liked that idea that there was more to something than your first perspective. And then with that level as well, it looks like an Rubik's cube because that was really my initial idea, is that I just wanted you to be able to like walk on different axes. But that was that's the spring level on the stream right now. You can kind of see it's cut up into really big cubes. But walking, all these different ways is actually really challenging at first. So it didn't. I didn't continue with that, but it was supposed to be. I wanted it to be like Rubik's.
Very cool. Yeah, I can definitely see that inspiration in the levels.
Yeah,
I've been trying to kind of describe the way that the levels rotate and different elements move independently or rotate at different degrees, directions. And I think a Rubik's Cube, as it is the inspiration, does a fantastic job of describing what's happening.
Yeah.
So to follow up with that, the visual design of the game definitely has a very, I would call it a very kind of saturated and high definition and almost dreamlike kind of aesthetic to it.
Yeah.
Where did you draw this visual art direction from?
I think it came from once. It took a while. It took a while to get it to where it's at now, to where I can feel like I'm actually. I have an idea, and then it kind of ends up. It finishes like I wanted it to, like the bicycle scene right here, and that just came with time and being comfortable with Unity. But the skyboxes, I kind of feel like once I was utilizing those and elements of the camera with, in terms of photography, I was like, this is where I feel most at home. And that really made me feel like it's just kind of like the idea of like golden hour, which is around like 7 o'clock evening, we'll say, in like the summer especially, and just like a really warm like orange kind of just like super like contrasty light that you can't like really just comes from the sun, and a lot of the levels like look like that. It's like dusk, in the summer, and I think that's like a really special time. So I really just appreciate that and have kind of tonally gone with that throughout the game.
Cool. Yeah, you can definitely see that, and it's a striking aesthetic, and definitely very, I don't know, something about it when I see it or I see one of your levels, I can tell it's yours. Or at least for Where the Bees Make Honey. Strong brand presence is what I'm saying.
Yeah, I mean, that's good. That's awesome. You said that because it's hard. It's I think that's something artists would want. You want to be able to look at someone's painting or photography or digital art and see like the fact that that's possible is really cool, because it's taken a long time to get to that point, and it doesn't just look like everyone else's. Whatever that does, not better or worse, but just it's unique in its own right.
Yeah. That's definitely very valuable in our industry today, where trying to stand out from the rest is paramount to making it.
Too many games.
Too many games.
Turns out.
Well, hey, we've got some more questions here. We've got a question from Sidonut, and the question is, what's your favorite seasonal level?
Wow. It's a great question. I'd say out of those 4, it's interesting because they're all my favorite, because there's only 4, and I spent so much time making each one unique. But I think summer always wins because of just the water and the way it looks, and anytime like it's a really good representation of the game. But I have something to say like for each of them, right? Like the winter level is what I started on first, and spent the most time in actually realizing what I was going to, what I was capable of making. But spring was the first level I had on paper years ago, and then fall is just interesting because it's like dark and nighttime almost, and it has like 12 lights going on at the same time. But to answer Sidonut's question, I'd say summer.
All right, very cool. Let's see. We've got a question here from Pete Cooper. How long has the game been in development? Excuse me.
It will be 2 years at the end of the year. So, yeah.
Exciting stuff.
Crazy. It's gone by it's gone by fast, but that's also a really long time to be working, and as you realize, on the same thing. So, yeah, 2 years.
Indeed. I've been working on my own project for around 3 now, and
I know.
I haven't gotten too sick of it yet.
Always want more time.
Ugh, always something else to do. Let's see. We've got a question here from Starroon Moon, who asks, what was your favorite part in the art of the game? It's fantastic, by the way.
Wow, thank you. That's really nice of you to say. What was my favorite part in the art of the game? I think, to answer that, it was when I realized that there was post-processing within Unity, and that I had more functionality with the camera, because it's really interesting to see, and I'll have to show it sometime, but what the game looks like with and without post-processing clicked on, because without it, it just looks like a PlayStation 2 video game, and it's cool. But especially the really like colorful levels, and like with it on, I feel like it's I was able to express in like editing pictures, and like Adobe's like Lightroom, or a little bit of Photoshop, where I was like, all of this makes sense, and that's has been my favorite part, because I could, if that were a position, like a single position at like a studio, that's what I would want to do. Just that. Yeah, that's my answer. But like, because a lot of it is just simple, they're just simple shapes within these levels. I don't work outside of Unity too much in terms of like 3D modeling if I don't have to. I really just like to keep it in there and, use those elements of photography. Yep.
Cool. Awesome. I'd love to follow up with a question. What kind of tools do you use, and what kind of you mentioned photography and as something that is inspiration for these levels and the environments and these tools and things that you find in Photoshop. What kind of tools do you use, and what are kind of the inspirations you gather for the tools you choose?
The tools within Unity?
The ones you use to create the game, I would say.
Yeah, okay. So I'd say it is primarily, Unity at its core. And then in terms of 3D modeling, I'll just, use Maya or Cinema 4D preferably. And then in terms of audio, because I've done as much of the sound and music as I can, and I'll use Logic Pro on my MacBook that has recently died, so I don't have that anymore. But that's I know. That's been really great, but no, mostly just Unity. I just love how everything is in there, and then there are too many plugins within Unity and other assets. And then another tool I'd say is this app called PureRef. Can I confirm this? Yeah, PureRef. And it's just like something like, I'm sure there's a phone app, but I use it on desktop, and it's basically just a canvas that you gather just like research material and references for. And it's basically you just drag and drop like pictures or just from online or on your computer, and it just creates a really big canvas, especially like in those beginning stages of levels when you need to have like everything in one place other than like not just like a folder on Windows, and it can get really kind of messy. It's cool, and they all just kind of cling together. It's really nice to see that in the beginning stages. So shout out to PureRef.
Cool. I was able to find their website, and I posted that to the chat in case anybody else wants to check out
Yeah.
PureRef.
Great. I think Brian Crick will appreciate it.
Awesome. Well, hey, we've got a number of more questions here.
Great.
If anyone else has any questions in the chat, please feel free to type them. I will make sure to get to them, and if I mention you, that means I've pinned it, and I will be asking it shortly. We've got another question from Sidonut. Have you ever been stung by a bee?
Yeah. But it was so long ago, and I think about that because I don't remember what that would feel like. You're like, it hurts, right? But like, how bad? Yeah, it's been like at least 10 years, but the answer is yes. I don't want to, like, I'm not excited to like for that to happen though.
Good deal. A admirable answer.
Yeah.
We've got a question here from Pete Cooper,
Mm-hmm.
who's asking, did you make the whole game by yourself, or did you have help?
Yeah, so primarily by myself. I like to say that the game was made by one person, but made possible by many. Without just other developers making assets or tutorials or just free things or things you could buy, the game wouldn't be possible. But I'm really just a one-person team. But I also have I have a voice actor who's also co-writing the game. Her name's Alex Wisner. But kind of within Engine, it's just me.
Good deal. That's harrowing. There's many hats you must wear to create a game. And,
yeah, you're kind of in that boat. With similar situations. It's entirely too much work for one person.
It is. I agree. Entirely too much work. Let's see here. We've got another question from Buddy, who's asking, where does the name "Where the Bees Make Honey" come from, and what does it mean?
Wow, buddy. I guess I can answer this by saying, when the game first started, back when I was starting it to actually have levels and some functionality, it was codenamed Liminal. I just didn't have a name for it or a title because I just wasn't there yet. It wasn't that important at the time. And my character had a red dress, same looking character, same mesh, but she had a red dress and like a bird's mask on. And I'll have to find that because I just realized that the game needed an identity. It needed something that made it, just its own thing. So I think within that, it was a few summers ago, I read a book on bees, and I just really appreciated their kind of existence and kind of their work ethic. Where I have on my business card, it says it's backwards, but it says, no, it's not for you. Nothing without labor, and it was actually an old IBM ad, and that just from there it just clicked. And then there's also an album by a band called Earth that's where the bees make honey in the lion's skull. And then when I thought of the name, it just I knew it, that was it. And I like that it's longer and not like fire or like fighting game too.
The sequel.
It's a thing. And I like that. That's interesting to me. It's poetic. And then in terms of the meaning, there's a few. But I'd say it was kind of when the story is pretty different in the beginning, but it was almost like the bees can almost navigate and have different nests. So it's like that the cliche of home is where you make it. So like where where you make honey, where you live mostly, like where your loved ones are.
Mm.
And then maybe as the story has progressed, it's more about the idea that bees just kind of do so much work without having like communicate with like others, and they just do their job, and then they die, and then they get replaced. And it's I think that's representative of um, maybe the direction the game has gone now.
Mm.
So
Cool.
I'll say that much. Thank you
Awesome.
for the question, buddy.
All right, we've got another question here from Kennethan, who's asking, where best can we follow the game for its upcoming Q1 2019 release?
Wow. That's important. You can follow, we have a Twitter, which is at WTBMH. I think that the Twitter is the best place to get updates on the game, because that's probably where I'll be able to send everything out. You'll find the website, but for updated most quickly, I'd say that Twitter, which I think you just linked.
All right, fantastic. I've got that link here in the chat if anybody wants to check it out. Let's see here. We've got a question here from Cy Donut. Who was the inspiration for your character, Sunny?
That's a great question. Sorry, I'm plugging in my phone. We cannot die.
The interview must go on.
Okay, I did it. Okay. So, can you hear me?
Yep, hear you just
Okay.
fine.
Everything was like silent for a second. Yeah. So for Sunny, what was the question?
Who was the inspiration for your character, Sunny?
Oh, okay. That's it. So early on, the story was more focused about. It was the idea that I never met either of my grandfathers. So I wanted to, use this game as almost a way to communicate and like experience that. But that as time went on, that shifted. So, but with Sunny, it was almost too personal that I couldn't, it couldn't be me. It had to be. It felt just more natural. It was always just like a little girl. And ever since then, and then once she was kind of created, it just stuck and made sense, and I couldn't do it any other way.
Interesting. Well, very cool. We've got a question here from Buddy asking, not trying to have any spoilers, but how will the game develop as you play?
Yeah, so I think it's best put that the game is just a really big reflection on this time when you were young. So, Where the Bees Make Honey tells a story about reflecting on these different moments when you were a child, but played and experienced from the perspective from an adult. So it's Sunny, but when she's grown up, and you get to play that at the beginning of the game in first person at her office job, in kind of these moments you're seeing on screen. Some of these moments are these reflections, and whether they're at the core, they're the puzzle levels and other transitional levels that are going to help tell the story. It's almost just it's just a nostalgia factor, and then that's all I'll say. Yeah.
All right.
So you start out as an adult playing in first person, and you kind of think back and reflect back onto when you were young, but you get to play that. So
all right. Hopefully not too spoilery for you, buddy.
That was pretty good.
All right, we got a question here from Pete Cooper, but before we do, if anybody else has any questions, please feel free to post them in the chat. Questions about the art, design, direction, where the bees make honey, being a game developer, so on and so forth. Please feel free to type them now and I will ask them on stream. So, our question from Pete Cooper: do you have a publisher or funding of some kind?
I do have a publisher. Our publisher is
Oh, snap.
Whitethorn Digital. Yeah, I can get into the process of that because this is a good place to talk about this stuff. Yeah, simply put, our publisher is Whitethorn Digital, and then in terms of funding, it is almost entirely out of pocket by me, and I'm a poor college student. So if I can do it, if I can get this far, it's entirely possible. And then Whitethorn has definitely helped with these, maybe more legal costs and with consoles and travel, which is definitely, that's a huge factor. And without a lot of that, I wouldn't have been able to go to some of these conventions. So, but that's it. We are in the middle of a Kickstarter right now, which we have to share. And the Kickstarter is primarily being launched for when the game is released. It's to put almost all of that money back into marketing, and so it can just kind of reach a larger audience and be a little more sound on these consoles and PC, because the market's just too saturated that you just will get swamped very quickly. So I'm not keeping any of that money. It's all going back in so we can just make it bigger.
All right, yeah, and full disclosure, guys, as the developer of Bobfest, I should make sure to mention that Whitethorn is also partnering with us to publish the game as well. So there is a link here. I might have known Brian before this Q&A, but still, plenty of questions to ask for those that I do not know the answer of. We've got...
Oh, is that the Kickstarter? Okay,
yep,
good.
I've got the link to the Kickstarter in the chat if you'd like to check it out, friends. And let's see, we got a couple more questions here. We've got a question from Buddy. How long have you had the idea for Where the Bees Make Honey? Not how long have you been making it, but how long you've wanted to do it.
Wow. No, that's a good question. And that's really specific too. I almost have this. It's just funny. I have this like journal notebook that has game design on it from when I first started. And I think it starts back from 2015, but if I'm not going to sift entirely through this, but it does. I'd say it goes back to 2015, 2016. Actually, this is funny. You can see this is good. This is good stuff. You can see this little picture. That one, this kind of cube.
Mm.
That's kind of my early ideas for the game. It said like, there's a world on each side of the cube, maybe a hidden secret. The main plane doesn't see.
Cryptic.
I think that makes sense. That was written in January of 2016. So a year before I started development. So yeah, I had that idea, and it always revolved around like kids, and like a brother and sister like playing, and they were like, that actually is the kitchen level in my game that I recently made that I had the idea for it. It's just like they're just really little in this like real world kitchen, but they're like kind of look like clay or plastic, and they're just like playing with like the utensils, and it's really cool to finally be able to make that 2 years later. But yeah, I think that was what January 2016, almost a year before I because I just didn't know what the heck or how to make that. So it takes time, turns out.
That it does. That it does. Let's see. We've got another question here from Pete Cooper, who asks, "What platforms will the game be on?"
Okay, the Where the Beast May Honey will be out at the end of March 2019 on Xbox One, PlayStation 4, and PC at launch.
Fantastic.
We're definitely interested in Switch, but those will come first, and if Switch is possible, technically, we will. I have my Switch right here. It's like that would be a really, really amazing, but it's a little. There's some hurdles for me. So, PlayStation, Xbox, and PC.
All right. Very exciting.
It's real. It's a real game.
That is, in and of itself, its own little joy. Let's see here. We've got a couple of questions from Bidon YT. I've got one saved from earlier. I'm going to ask that one first, Bidon. We'll get your second. And if anybody else has any questions for Brian, feel free to ask in the chat, and we will get to them. So, first question, were the puzzles in the game at all inspired by Captain Toad Treasure Tracker?
Yeah, that's a good question. Not initially. And Fez is the other comparison that's made, which is great because those two games are Fez is my favorite game ever, and Captain Toad was a big inspiration, but like later, the initial, or I should say, the initial mechanic wasn't inspired by those games, but but to answer your question, I would say Captain Toad was an inspiration in terms of the puzzles, because they did such a good job of creating an entire world into like a small thing, like that you could kind of just almost see all at once. And of course, like Nintendo did like an amazing job and will do that better than anyone. So yeah, but no, I love Captain Toad, and I love that it exists, because they gave me the challenge of having everything be on screen at once within those puzzle levels. So some of their levels are definitely a lot bigger, and when the camera moves around. But that gave me the challenge of like, I want everything to be on scene at once. The camera doesn't move; the world actually moves. And then when you have these limitations, that's where your creativity actually starts to come out, when you have boundaries to work in, and that's when those puzzles actually can really take on a life of their own. So I think the answer is yes. Simply.
All right, let's see here.
I had a Wii U. Like, I bought that game on Wii U. Like, shout out to the Wii U.
Shout out to Wii U. Check it out, WiiU.com.
Did you have one? Did you have a Wii U?
I did not, actually. I had the Wii, and I've got a Switch now, but
that's really too much of a shame.
I've got Super Smash Bros. Brawl, and that's been the only Brawl I've owned for the majority of my life.
Yeah.
And feel a little out of the loop, to be honest.
Well, also Captain Toad has been ported to Switch, so anyone interested, definitely, it's amazing. Play my game when you can.
Yeah, that's Where the Bees Make Honey. I've been hearing about it. All right.
Is that what we're doing? Is that what we're talking about?
Then indeed it is. Let's see. We got some more questions here. Bidon YT is asking, what engine is it using?
Unity.
Short and
check. Yeah, so I might as well get into it a little bit. So when I was graduating, I was like, we're at our final semester at CCAC, where I have my first degree. It was like the winter break, that one of our final classes was to use Unity. At least this is what it said in like the class description, and we were supposed to use Unity and make a game in Unity with for VR. And we had an HTC Vive in the building. So my class was there were like 4 of us. And we like felt, and this still holds true, we felt like we were just learning the entire time, but not making anything. We were never actually like making games. So that winter, I actually like saved up to build the machine I have now, like an actual computer, not my MacBook, and I downloaded Unity, and then, which everyone should, and then when it came time to the next semester in class, our professors changed, and we just had like this like 25-year-old adjunct who was just no comment, and it was just another like animation class, which I say that because we took like that was it, before, because it's hard to teach game development. And we were bummed because we were like, this isn't like, we just want to make games. We want to try to make games. So that just gave me the spark of like, just fuck it. Like, I'm going to do it. And that was the start. And it wasn't, it could have been, I guess, Unreal or whatever, but Unity just felt was like, oh, the games I like use this. It's free. And then ever since then, it's always felt like home.
Hey, not bad.
That was a good commercial. They should hire me.
We've got I interpreted a question from Astroilogica, who is saying that Monument Valley and Echochrome were the vibes I were pulling from this game, which is great, because I absolutely adore perspective puzzlers. Were Monument Valley or Echochrome inspirations for Where the Bees Make Honey?
Yeah, I think Monument Valley for sure. I think I've played Echochrome. I think it's like black and white almost. Yeah, it is. Yeah, I've seen that. But no, not at. It's interesting because not at the beginning. Monument Valley already did that idea of like walking up, be able to walk vertically and like twist. And like at the start, I was like, I don't know, there's no way I could do that. But Monument Valley is made in Unity, and I would say I borrowed the fact that they used they're using an orthographic camera, and once I found that button, it was like, oh, this is great. I know what this is, so in those senses, like, yeah, there's definitely like inspiration or elements, I should say, pulled from those games, but also play Monument Valley. The second one's good too, and I have the soundtrack on vinyl, which Sedona got me for Christmas, I believe.
Not bad.
The chat members in the chat, good people.
All right. We've got a number of more questions here. A quick one from Bdon YT: Mario Sunshine or 64?
Oh, I'd say Sunshine.
Good man.
I was too young to completely have that moment that a lot of people have with 64 for the like 3D for the first time. I was more, for me, that was more Crash Bandicoot, and Spyro.
Nice.
It's just remastered. Cool borders. PlayStation 1 was when I was actually old enough to like, this is a thing. So, and I've gone back to Super Mario 64, but like, I don't have those feelings towards it as most people do. So that's when I was like, I had the GameCube to play Sunshine, and I was still pretty young, but I just have more playtime with that. But I'd be curious to actually go back and play those games, as in like, to see what they're doing as its time has passed. So
Cool. B Done YT says, he said sunshine. Time to upgrade my pledge on Kickstarter.
wow, what a guy.
What a
Or
guy.
girl.
Or girl.
Thank you.
We've got a question here from Buddy
Okay.
asking, what or who inspired you to develop games professionally?
Wow, perfect. Well, I'm a professional.
You and I, soon.
He said it. But, Jesus. Not Jesus. He didn't inspire me to make games. Wow. So I do have the and I'm not embarrassed by it, but like, because I feel like a lot of Indie Game the movie, which I saw on Netflix when I was a senior in high school, and I think that was like 2013. And like I said, at that time, I was I fell back in with games like entirely, and that was like Fez, Super Meat Boy Braid. Those three were like my first indie games. I didn't know no one really knew what those were. That's the whole point of the movie. But seeing that, and it's a cliche because it's exactly what they say. If I can inspire people, it's like the fact that like a few people can make something. I had entirely no idea that was possible. I just thought video games were magic, and I still do. I didn't know how they were made or that was even possible. And that's when I'd say like, Phil Fish and Fez I think Fez is the one of the smartest games in of all time. Like it's I hold it to such a high standard. I think it's going to age. It has already aged really well. And I just like how this is just me talking about Fez. I just like how that it's such a video game. But was the question who?
Who or what? So Fez is a perfect answer.
Yeah, Fez is probably the best, game example because it is my favorite. And I think that's when it be having. But see, where the start of where the bees make honey, it wasn't like I'm going to make a game like Fez. It was like I think it's more about those things that you love about some of your favorite games that you don't even think about. They're just like subconsciously like in you. And I think older developers than a little bit older than us like had those moments with like Metroid, Zelda, Mario 3, and those they just come out even though their games could be so different. Fez, absolutely.
Very cool. All right, we've got plenty more to go. We've got Astro Illogica asks,
Yep.
Hey, my dude, do you have any advice for people just starting in Unity?
Wow. I do. No, yeah. I think within Unity, it's like there's absolutely like use their like standard assets in their like pre-made games or elements of, and because it's so I remember getting in that interface, and I think it's most daunting because it was just a different UI. You're like, I don't know what any of this is, and then it's scary, and you quit and you never touch it. But like I think the best from like first like start with one of those like practice games and like make changes until you start to realize like, oh, I did this, or like if I click the mesh render button off, the box is invisible, but I still hit it physically. And then you start to have those like light bulb moments and things start to check. And it's like, you have to do those things before you can be like, I'm going to make this weird game about a bee, and there's a level where you drive a monster truck and a rabbit's there, and it's like I never thought I would have gotten to that point because that's too much too soon. I think it's was about like just my goal was to like have something playable on screen, and then like you use what's already there first. So and just email me, and I'll help you. So that's my other question. Answer.
Fantastic. Astrologico replied, that is absolutely good advice, by the way. Thank you.
Thank you. You're welcome.
Okay, we got a question here from Cytonet asking, what's next after Where the Bees Make Honey?
Oh God. That's like a really scary thing to think about, but really interesting because that just means like the game will be done. And I've already started to think about the next game. There are definitely other ideas and concepts and mechanics for it. And as much as I'll say like, well, in terms of my life, it's to go to bed. But in terms of, I think in terms of the game, it's like it's just a lot of ways. If like Where the Bees Make Honey is like an acoustic guitar, like the next game is like distorted electric guitar, and I think a lot of it is like the same developer, but just like different side of the brain or whatever. So just Where the Bees Make Honey is bright and colorful, and you can't fall off or get hurt. And there's a lot of ideas I had that I just couldn't. This wouldn't fit in the game or wouldn't make sense. So I'd say a lot of it is a little more opposite, but just like ideas about like problems within environmental science and the author Jim Harrison and just like the color black and red and just movies, and I think it's all these other things first before like inspiration from other games, because like I think Where the Bees Make Honey started inspired by other games, and it's not that that's a good or bad thing, it's just how it happens. So I think this next game is definitely like has all these other elements first that I want to channel into. But so I'd say that would probably just start to begin like brainstorming prototyping in like the summer. So sometime, and then I'll probably take another 2 years. So see you in 2020.
Well, hopefully we can get you back on here to ask about the next one.
All right, I'm alive.
We got a couple more questions here from our wonderful Asker buddy. What has been the development monster of making this game? What created the most trouble during production?
Wow, buddy. I keep thinking of the movie Elf. And my aunt has a dog named Buddy. So it's a really interesting crossover. So what has created
what has been the development monster of making the game, or what created the most trouble during production?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I'd say it's Unity updates like ruined my life, because it's when the project like has such an error that you can't even run the game with an engine, and that's a really bad feeling. But I guess it's early on, it was the scary idea of like, how do I have a level or in a scene go from one to the other? How do I do that? Or like, how do I have a save system ? Like all these things that are like, I got to a point where I was just comfortable enough, and then those real things like a menu. I'd still say like there's too many. There's too many things that can go wrong that like I don't know how I've gotten this far, and I don't know how most games are made because of that. There's just too many moving parts. And I think it's being a solo developer, you're really kind of using a lot of what other people have made, and those don't always communicate with each other. And it's also, another simple answer is that like it's really easy to make the game look beautiful, but then it runs very poorly, and those are kind of correlated. Um, and so I think having the game run well, and we'll kind of maybe use the term like optimized, is really difficult. And I think that's maybe some of the technical aspects are difficult for me, because I'm not a programmer, even though I have a lot of like classes and experience in it, but I can't. I'm not Zach, and I can't do a lot of those things. So I think it's like you're limited by that. So I would say just like more technical things in programming have been the biggest issue, because there's like, here's the thing I want to do, but I don't know how to do that. And it's not that, sometimes it's not like Google how to do this, and it's like I can't wrap my head around that idea. So I think it's what I'm saying is like programming, some technical aspects, and just like your own level of actually, you're limited. I think being limited by myself has been really a challenge. So thanks, buddy.
All right.
Okay, let's keep going.
We got a few more here. If anybody else has any questions, we'll be wrapping up in, say, a few more minutes here. But we got time for at least...
We have so much more.
We do have so much more.
No,
oh, goodness. We've got the classic from Ronan. We're going to hit this one real quick. What is the airspeed velocity of an unladen swallow?
I don't have an answer for that question.
Well, Lil Slick might have answered it for you with African or European. Okay, so moving on to the other questions.
I don't know. I'm so lost in the chat that I'm not going to ignore that
one. All right. We've got, let's see here. We got a question from Buddy. How did you learn about Whitethorn, and why did you decide to go with them to publish your game? And yes, Whitethorn is in the chat.
Great question. No, this. I was going to mention that earlier. So how that happened is it was a big coincidence, but a really happy accident, I guess. So the kind of the scope for Where the Bees Make Honey was just the 4 puzzle levels and maybe a little bit of a beginning video and ending, and that was it. But I knew about Matt White, kind of half of Whitethorn, because he used to teach at the college I go to. So he like showed up at like there's a game club, game development club, and I went to like 2 meetings, and he was at one of them, and it's just like, who is this guy? And like I saw him like on Twitter and stuff, but I didn't. Whitethorn wasn't the brand publisher wasn't created yet, and I had the idea of sending him my game because I just knew he had experience, and I was like, I just needed feedback and stuff. But literally at the end of March last year, we had a festival called DigitFest, which is like the kind of what my major is known as, and I had my game set up there, and I was just like more of a playtesting session. I was like asking people questions, and a former student who was like helping him out named Appa. Matt wasn't there, but Appa was, and she saw my game and was like, hey, like you should get in touch with Matt. He's starting this thing. And I was like, all right, I don't know. And then we met at Erie Brewery up the street, and he was kind of, Whitethorn was a lot different than is now. It wasn't maybe as much as like a publisher, and I didn't really know what that was or if I needed it. He just really wanted to bring like talent in and help him with his experience. But it was really, I guess, to this is long-winded, but it was the perfect next step for me. and it was like right in front of me, and I was like, sometimes you don't realize it until like after it happens. So it was a really huge coincidence that like I showed my game at a really small thing, and someone saw it, and like it's all about meeting people, and yeah, and ever since then it's kind of been like what it's turned into. Yeah, and without Whitethorn, I don't. It's safe to say that like we wouldn't maybe be able to get on major consoles, if at all, easily, or as easy. So, what was the question? Yeah, yeah. So I should say Matt lives in Erie, Pennsylvania, where I go to college. So it was a really huge coincidence that like, and I was the first one to sign, and just really fortunate for that experience, because like I said, it was the exact next step I needed. And he was at a scale where it was possible. So yay.
Cool. All right, we're coming down to the last few minutes here. I've got 3 questions, and we'll try and hit all of them. Ready?
Nope.
All right. First, we've got.
We could like push back to like 9:30 unless you have to go.
we probably should keep within the time that I set out for it, but we could try and speed through these. We've got first
right.
From Buddy. How long have you and Zach known each other?
Not long, but we've become buddies. You came to Erie maybe in like the end of spring, last year. So like maybe like.
Yeah, that must have been.
I'd say like 6 months. I'd say, if that's how math works, but maybe half a year. Yeah.
I think that's about right. Let's see.
Yeah, it was like decent out.
It was decent out, wasn't it? So it must have been a while ago.
Yeah, not yet. Yeah, and it wasn't over. Yeah, I'd say like maybe like April or May or something.
That sounds about right.
So okay.
Let's see here. We've got a question from Sidonut. Molly, plus your mama, want to know what will happen in the game between the seasonal levels.
Whoa. Okay, real quick. In between each of the seasonal levels, which are puzzle levels, is kind of where I'm mixing up gameplay and telling the story. So I've been calling them vignettes. They've also been called interstitials. And it's just a different form of gameplay that's not a puzzle level. So for right now, like the one where it's like in the kitchen, that's one. I have one where you control a rabbit. There's the one where you control a monster truck. They're just kind of, those are almost like memories in specific times. That's like specific periods that you get to play. So, yep.
Cool. And I think
one
our last
each seasonal level. So
sick. We've got our last question here from Pete Cooper. If there is one thing you could change about the game, what would it be?
Wow. Change? I don't know. That's not to like, marketing speak, but like I've gotten to make the exact game that I wanted to make. And that's kind of rare. Developers, because they don't always have that freedom. One thing I guess in a maybe more like cheeky answer, like I wish the game was maybe more technically sound. Like I said about some of those issues, I wish it were just easier for it to be. Everything runs perfectly well at 200 frames, and you have no problems, and your load times are no. There's no load times. So I wish, I guess, change, but that's maybe that's just iteration. But I don't know. I don't have too much of an answer.
No
I made
worries.
exactly what I wanted to make, and like I said, like I'm nearing the end, and I'm making the I should say I'm starting to become really comfortable and like with what I'm capable of, and that always grows. But that's been really really cool, and I think it's interesting for these same levels to be in the levels from the beginning, because like you get to see that. Oh, I know that progress. I know my own progress, and that's really important.
Well, hey, I think with that, we are through all of our questions, and we will wrap it up here. I want to thank you, Brian, for joining us, but I also want to thank the chat. Thank you guys so much for popping in for the fantastic questions. You kept our, for some reason what I jumped to was you kept our pockets full of questions to ask. So we're going to go with that. Thanks for filling our pockets with questions, guys, to ask Brian about Where the Bees Make Honey, his upcoming game coming out March of next year, Q1 of 2019. I've got some links to throw at you here. We've got the Twitter account for Where the Bees Make Honey. Feel free to check that out. I encourage you to give it a follow. And if this is a game you'd like to look into or even personally invest in, you can follow this link to get to the Kickstarter, where you can support the game right now. Consider giving it a look, even if you're not considering on backing it, just to see if it's something you'd be interested in the future, or if it's someone you know would be interested in as well. And with that, thank you again, Brian. Is there anything else you want us to plug for you?
No, that was quite the outro. No, thank you for having me. I want to keep talking, and we'll have to do another one again. But yeah, I'd say next up is just keeping active on the Kickstarter, finishing the game on my end. I won't be at any major conventions until GDC publicly, so I want to finish the semester. I am still a student, and yeah, check out my Kickstarter. Check out Whitethorn and join our Discord, because we have one now where you can check out all the Whitethorn games, and it just which I love, all of them, and want everyone to do well, and can't wait to see this with Starcross and Bombfest. So yeah, come hang out. And this has really felt like more of a community more than anything, within the past 6 months of joining Whitethorn. And it's exactly it's what Matt wanted it to be, and I think that's really cool. And I'm happy to be a part of it. Come hang out and check out my Kickstarter.
And we've got the Kickstarter link there in the chat if you need it again. I will throw that out there just one more time in case you missed it. We also just posted the link to the Discord if you'd like to join us, and I guess I do mean us, to talk about Where the Bees Make Honey, Bombfest, and other games underneath Whitethorn Digital. Thank you guys again for joining us and for asking some great questions to Brian. We will be hosting we'll be hosting some more interviews like this in the future with all sorts of developers and influencers. So if you'd like to see more of these, feel free to drop a follow on this Twitch channel. And once again, please check out Where the Bees Make Honey. Follow Brian Wilson on social media. And if there's anything we can be doing for you, hit us up on Twitch, Discord, Twitter, whatever suits your fancy. Thank you again, Brian. And have a good night, everybody.